Welcome back to the channel. So on today's video, I'm working on the GX470 and I discovered something kind of alarming on my sunroof recently when I opened it. I found a bunch of corrosion that's underneath. Apparently, it's a common problem on these GX470s as well as 4Runners. In this video, I'm going to show you how to go ahead and take the sunroof out so we can sand those areas down, epoxy it, and then recoat it with some paint or something to keep it from actually further corroding and getting worse. So stay tuned. In here working on the GX470 and I opened the sunroof and I realized this thing's been corroding like crazy, which apparently is a common issue with the sunroof on the 4Runner and the GX470. It might be the same sunroof or similar make and model, but anyways, look at that. So everything's just corroded and rusted, and this is just due to water getting trapped in there, because on Toyota vehicles the sunroof is designed to actually drain and leak so that water can get into here and actually drain out of the two holes on top. So you always want to make sure those holes are cleared with compressed air every once in a while, just to make sure there's no dirt and dust in there. But overall, this thing is bad. So what I'm going to do today is take this thing off and then try to clean up some of this and then spray paint it or put some anti-rust on it to at least reduce this corrosion before it gets really bad. So to remove the sunroof, you need to take apart these two little pieces of trim right here to access the T25 Torx bits. There's two of them on each side to take it out. I've already taken apart the driver's side. So what you have is you have these two panels right here. These things are very brittle and delicate, so you gotta be careful with them. You can pretty much pull them off by hand. So there's one rail. This is the top rail right here that goes onto the glass, and this is the bottom rail, which is the one that kind of slides back and forth, and it's only held on by these two clips right there and that plunger right there. There's a plunger lineup right here and then another one of those clips right here in the back, so you could pretty much pull this piece off by hand. This one is a little bit more difficult because it's got these two teeth right here that kind of hold it in, and that's where most people break it, right here where these teeth are. So you got to be careful with that when you're popping it out. So on this side, what you do is basically just kind of find a spot where that thing is and just pop it, and then it just pulls off by hand, and then this top piece goes onto there, and it came off pretty easily on this side. But yeah, you just gotta be careful with that clip right there. Kind of pull it downwards and then get it out of that rail right there, and then once you do that, you could just pop these two ends right there and it comes right out. Once we're in here, you get the T25 Torx on this side and that side. Make sure that Torx fits perfectly into there, and then when you turn it, make sure you're turning it with firm force, because those strip out easily and you don't want to mess those things up, and they're also on there pretty damn tight. So just make sure you do that and not strip out those Torx bits. If you guys didn't know, all sunroofs on these cars are designed to leak slowly and drain, and over time what it looks like is all the water is getting stuck in this seal right here and just causing corrosion around these edges. So all this stuff is just basically flaking off, and I can see signs of it on the side here. So to prevent some of this, or just to reduce it or slow it down, I'm going to clean all this up. Probably grind it down with a little grinding wheel just to get rid of most of this corrosion. This stuff's pretty thick and it's already penetrated through. And then I'm gonna put some epoxy on here and just coat it with some paint just to see how long it's gonna last with this. Hopefully it'll last a couple more years on this vehicle. But yeah, I mean, there's really no way to stop it. It's already started and it's just gonna keep on eating away at this. So one of the things is this rubber seal, it can pop off and just kind of peel away from the actual sunroof and the frame. So that's the first thing I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and just peel that whole trim off and see what's underneath as I start trying to refurb this or stop the corrosion. Alright, I was able to peel that seal off. So what that seal is actually held on here is some butyl rubber. This is the same kind of rubber that's used to seal up headlights and other things like around windows and stuff. It's a malleable kind of rubber that you can heat up and then it'll seal again, and just over time out in the sun this thing kind of melts and then seals itself up, right? So what it looks like is that seal right there is kind of letting liquid and moisture in, and the moisture is just kind of sitting in this channel with nowhere to go, and it ends up just getting over here and starts the corrosion on the edge. So just on the underside there, it just spreads and just gets all over the place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and clean this all up with a little grinder, put some epoxy on it just to seal it up, and then spray it with some trim paint just to make sure that it's sealed up and see if this will work. And then to put that seal back on, what I'm going to do is just heat gun this to kind of melt all that butyl rubber, and then just squeeze that thing back in, and then just leave it out in the sun, and just the heat from the sun kind of do its own thing as far as remelting this stuff and resealing it. So I got all the prep done. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Permanex gel rust remover. This thing takes about 10 minutes to help dissolve away some of the rust. So I'm going to go ahead and brush it on the inside channel here first, and then let it sit there, and then flip this thing over and do the backside. Alright, we went ahead, rinsed this thing all off with a hose outside. I dried it off, so now I'm going to put some epoxy on it. I'm just going to use JB Weld, some JB Quick, just to get a lot of that pitting and everything out of here, or at least covered up before I coat it. I'm going to use a anti-corrosion, anti-rust black on top of it before I put some trim paint on it just to finish it off. I ended up coating all the edges and the top here with some JB Weld epoxy. Let this thing dry for a little bit, flip it over, and just finish kind of in the channel and getting all the surfaces or the areas prone to a lot of corrosion. I'll let this dry and then spray it afterwards. Alright, went ahead, did as much as I can in this channel. So I'll go ahead and just let this dry. Then next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and just mask up everything. That way I don't end up painting the glass for any reason when I do that trim paint or that anti-corrosion, anti-rust black paint in this channel on the backside also. Alright, so I've let this stuff dry, so all that JB Weld epoxy is dried. Pretty much sealed up most of the areas, but we still have some of that surface rust there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just spray it with this Seymour rust converter right here. It's a rust converting paint that's gonna stop any future corrosion happening on the existing corrosion. I was able to paint all the edges on here and let it dry for a little bit. So now I can go ahead and put the rubber back in. One of the things, since we ripped it out with that butyl rubber, we'll go ahead and heat it with the heat gun to kind of melt it a little bit so it's easier to push back in. Once we push back in, I want to go ahead and heat it again so that way it can melt some of that rubber and reseal up. Alright, went ahead and got everything back in, pushed the seal through, heated it up along the way just to make sure it got in there and tucked in. So we're pretty much good there. I wiped it all clean, so we'll go ahead and put it back on the vehicle, and hopefully this thing doesn't leak, or it does. Well, it's supposed to leak. Hopefully we reduce some of the corrosion and that doesn't come back later. In addition to fixing the sunroof, you probably also want to get up here and check your drains. So the sunroof's going to have a little drain right there on either side. You can test it by just pouring water in and seeing if it drips to the floor, and then you can also blow compressed air in it if it is clogged. Alright, so everything drained out properly, so we're good on the drains, nothing clogged here. Alright, I went ahead and put this thing back in there. Once you put the glass back in, you have to make adjustments, just because there is a bunch of adjustments when you screw it in, and you gotta be careful not to cross thread or mess up any of your threads. But yeah, you want to make sure when you're on top that the whole roof is flush and none of the back or the front is lower than the other end, or else a lot of water is going to get in. It's designed to have a slow leak. There's actually a little plastic or rubber thing that catches moisture that comes in there and just drains it out to. Once you get it back in, you just want to test it, you know, a couple of times just to make sure everything's good and that it's lined up and it opens and closes. Once you're done with that, you go ahead and put those trims that we took off earlier back in to make sure that's all tight and good in there. Thanks for joining me all the way to the end of this video on fixing that sunroof and all that corrosion. I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, give the video a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.